Because I think if you can mold the way children view, and you mold it in a way that's not based on anything real, you can control them. And you can control basically how they go forward in life and the way they think. I mean, I don't think it's about gender, only gender, right? It's about also this larger anti-scientific theme that feelings are more important than reality or objective truth, that there maybe is no such thing as objective truth. And so once you teach children these things, they really are dependent on you, I think. You're not giving them the tools to think. They're dependent on you to tell them how to think or what to think.
And what's the outcome for this? Specifically in the gender and sexuality, what have you both seen? How does this affect young people and their development?
Well, they're totally lost, I would say. I mean, we even have comprehensive sex ed here. I am in favor of comprehensive sex ed. I do think it's important for children to learn about healthy human sexuality, obviously not to learn about having sex necessarily. It has to be age appropriate, but I do think that's helpful because children who do receive comprehensive sex ed make better decisions about their sexual health. They do tend to delay when they begin having sex. They're more likely to use protection, things like that. But my issue is when it has these ideas that are not scientific. So when you're teaching this to children, I mean, I have a chapter in the book about sex and dating. There's even young adults are completely clueless when it comes to how to relate to the opposite sex if they're straight, because they're being told basically men and women are the same. So I think this is really harmful, especially for young women, because they're going into these situations without a clear expectation of what men are actually like when it comes to sex. They're not going to be the same as us.
It's funny, in general, I agree with Debra Soh that sex ed, comprehensive sex ed is a good thing for kids. It's just that schools have done such a horrifically bad job of it that in recent years, I tend to, really respect empirical, sort of facts on the ground. And it definitely they don't seem to be doing a good job of it. And I think you probably agree with that. You mentioned how, they deceive parents. In California, it's been shocking. I mean, when I went in and found, I talk about in the book, the ways they were deceiving parents. In 2019, the parents found out that there would be a new curriculum involving all kinds of sexual things, from blood play. They would be taught about blood play, all kinds of, anal sex, they would be taught masturbation. I mean, things that just really went beyond what you thought kids need to hear from their 7th grade teacher. And they had a protest. There was a major protest in Sacramento, and some of the most explicit books and really odd books were taken off the curriculum. And so, I was able to talk to various teachers sort of undercover, whatever, some of them didn't, I didn't use names and whatnot. And they showed me that these books had then been supplied to the teachers after they officially removed them through the virtual curricula that they supplied teachers. So the teachers, what was going on in the classroom was very different from what the parents were seeing. And you see this all over. I mean, I don't know, why would you want to? I mean, these teachers seem to have a savior complex, many of them, in which they think they are, teaching kids is boring, but saving lives through this, emancipation from I don't know, binary, biology is somehow more valorous.
And I feel for the parents because in many cases they feel completely helpless. And in some cases, even the law is on the side of the educators in terms of removing parents from any sort of decisions about this stuff when it comes to their kids.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, I have trouble not seeing this in conjunction with a number of things, not only sort of all norms falling apart and boundary violations. We sort of feel like our sexuality is everybody's business and, even a 7th graders and whatnot. But also, we're having so few kids in the West. We're having, the younger generation, the same woke generation is having far fewer kids. And, Debra was just talking about the undercutting of parents. And there's been a real demonization of parents in the school system by young people who are generally not having kids. And on some level, I wonder if they just don't understand that when parents, and I'm talking about most parents, okay? I'm not talking about the abusers, but you're talking about people who give millions of hours to being with these children, to raising them, to making sure they're still alive year after year. And these are not, these are people who know their kids. And the idea that some professional who shows up for an hour and decides, oh, wait a second, everything that person who raised that kid, everything they think is wrong, I know the truth. The profound hubris of that, and the idea that they should be accepted, whereas the poor, schnook who actually raised the child should be completely undercut and ignored, is a very disturbing trend. That's totally right. And also, I talk to a lot of parents, obviously, for my book. I talked to, well over 6 at this point. But for the book, I interviewed a little less than 6. And they're worried about losing custody. I mean, when a young woman goes through adolescence, I mean, I can tell you, I was a real handful for my mother. I mean, I got to tell you. And these girls, sometimes they just want to stick it to mom. And if the parents happen to be in a divorce and are on opposite sides of this, I talked to a woman a couple of weeks ago, and she was afraid of losing. She's really on the verge of losing custody because her daughter announced at 12 that she was trans. And the gender nonconforming mom, this is a very masculine mom. I've talked to her at length, and I know her occupation and whatnot. This is not not someone who insists on rigid gender roles. She said to her, honey, you're 12 years old. This isn't making sense that you're suddenly trans. I've known you since you were a kid. And she didn't go along with it. But the dad, who did not have custody, and the stepmom thought it was great. And now she's on the verge of losing custody. Literally, because the girl confided in her stepmom that she doesn't feel safe with mom, and they brought in a social worker. I mean, these are the kind of games that 14-year-old girls play with, to get rid of. I mean, they just do. I mean, they really want to stick it to mom. The problem is now we have an engine that will come in and take your child away if you're not going along with the party line. And these parents feel hopeless. They really do. They feel they're afraid they'll lose their jobs. They're afraid to lose custody. I mean, they are so isolated. I think, I think that we spend altogether all too much time thinking about ourselves today. But especially young kids. Wow. I mean, they should be busy. They should be out doing stuff. They should not be thinking about how they feel every second of every day. It's so extreme. I mean, I'll give you an example. When my kids started school, they decided at my kids' school that they needed to bring in a psychologist to talk to the kids about their anxiety about COVID. Well, you can imagine what that produces: anxiety about COVID. We spend so much time talking about our feelings and taking our temperature that these kids are never allowed to ignore any normal human discomfort. And let's be honest, we feel uncomfortable even after we pass through adolescence. There's tons of discomfort in our bodies, especially for women. So, anything that, young women wrote about this in their diaries or used to talk about it with their girlfriends. Now they take it online and they talk about it in public. And it's a much, much worse situation. And all kinds of adults are weighing in with these children. They're either celebrating them or encouraging all kinds of bad things, including sending pictures and whatnot. This is not where adolescence is supposed to occur. It's not supposed to occur among a lot of strangers and adults who weigh in on your sexuality. It really should occur in private and by reading books and whatnot and anything we can do to have these kids stop focusing on themselves for as much time as possible would seem to do them a lot of good.
For women, so for people born female who identify as male, you will have, similar to with male to female, there's the early onset. So these are people who are born, they're girls who are very masculine from a young age. They're more male typical. So there's that trajectory. There's another subtype which is called autohomoerotic gender dysphoria, which is of young women born female who have eroticized the idea of being a gay man having sex. So this is something that I found very confusing when I first heard about this so Ray Blanchard has done some research on this. Because as a straight woman, I grew up in the gay community. All my friends were gay men. I could never picture wanting to have sex with any of my friends, as much as I love them. I mean, to me, the relationship a straight woman has with a gay man is very special, but it's definitely not sexual. So my understanding is these young women are sexually attracted to gay men or their gay male friends, and so they transition to have sex with their gay male friends. So that's one aspect of it. My understanding is it's also because of the influence of pornography. These young women don't want to be dominated by a male partner. They don't want to be penetrated by a male partner. So instead, if they take on the male role, they see themselves as more equal to a male partner. So it also comes down to sexual orientation. So the early onset, these girls are usually attracted to women. So I'm not saying this very well, but they're born female, transition to male, attracted to women. That's the early onset subtype. And then so this second subtype that I'm talking about is born female, they choose to transition to male, but they're attracted to men. So it's analogous in a way to the male to female typology, in that is also broken up based on sexual orientation. So that if the early onset, again, they're born male, identifies female, attracted to men. And then with autogynephilia, born male, identifies female, attracted to women.
Right. And then we have the rapid onset, which is, what I wrote my book about, which is generally neither of those. These are, lonely, precocious girls who have no idea what their sexuality is. They spend all their time with mom. They don't spend very much time with other teenagers, but they go online, and that's when they decide maybe they're, something other than female. It's not coming from an organic place of, sexuality exploration. They are very, very young. Even at 14, they're more like sort of 12-year-olds or 11-year-olds of prior generations, because they haven't been on their own very much, and certainly not with other kids in person. So, what we're seeing is really, among that population is really like a hysteria, a fad.